Alright guys, so today I'm going to be bringing you my Super Tank D3-FNC Frontline Submachine Gun Melting DPS build. I know it's quite a mouthful, and I'll try to be as quick as possible with this, but there's a lot of really cool interactions, and this is my favorite build so far on 1.5 that I've constructed. I see a lot of utility in it, and a lot of, metagame presence in the Dark Zone, especially going forward. So to start off with, I'll talk about all my gear pieces, I'll talk about my two weapons, I'll talk about my skills, my talents, and I'll demonstrate in the firing range as well as some live gameplay. So what I have here is 4 pieces of the D3-FNC set. Now the 2-piece bonus, not very important, is 15% protection from elites. The 3-piece bonus is 30% ballistic shield health. That's very important. And the 4-piece bonus is allows using an SMG if one is equipped when ballistic shield is deployed. SMG crit chance is reduced to 0%. Now there's a way around that I'll talk about in a second. But what this means is you can have a ballistic shield and still use an SMG, dish a lot of damage, and absorb a lot of damage and become much tankier, have much higher toughness, relative toughness. So that's important to know. So I'm talking about all 4 of my pieces. First, I have a very high firearms roll here. I have health. You do not want to roll critical hit chance there. It's very important not to because it's useless when using this build. And for a minor attribute, since it is now available in PvP and actually has an effect on enemies' armor in terms of players, 8% enemy armor damage is a minor attribute. That's very important. You're going to want to roll that everywhere you possibly can because it now has a tangible, direct impact on enemy players in PvP. So it's important to pick that up and not ignore that any further, especially while choosing a valid PvP build. Moving on to my knee pads, I have a good stamina roll on these. I have armor as a major attribute. It's very important to roll armor across the board. Armor is now the super good attribute that you're still going to roll across the board from 1.4. Nothing has changed there. But the addition of armor shred makes it a little bit less valuable if you are going to run something like this, shield build where you're hopefully not going to be taking direct damage to your player very often. That being said, I have opted to roll it on all my different pieces. I still think it's very valuable, but if you want to opt out of that into something else like EDR, if you're really going to be absorbing grenades, etc., that's a valid choice and a valid line of play. As you can see here, enemy armor damage 11%, again, very important to roll. Moving on, I have my gloves. I have SMG damage, critical hit damage, health on kill. I don't want critical hit damage because I'm not going to be getting crits very often with this build, if at all. And you definitely don't want critical hit chance. What you want is health on kill and possibly something like damage to elites. But SMG damage is the most important. As you can see, they're stamina gloves. They do get the job done, but they don't have a very great role in terms of my main stat of stamina. Moving on to my holster, I've rolled armor. Very important to roll that there. There's nothing else that's going to be competitive here, especially since you're going to be using an SMG and not a pistol. So major attribute, always armor on your holster, and aim for over 1200 across the board. I have a little bit low rolls here, but it gets the job done. It's the only one that I had, and it's still an extremely competitive build, even without perfectly min-max rolls. Moving on to my 2 high ends, I'm starting off with the Specialized Spec Ops bag. Now, Specialized adds 200% of firearms and stamina to skill power. This is an extremely competitive talent in 1.5, especially because they've increased the amount of main stats that you can roll. So as you can see, between firearms and stamina, I have over 11,000. And when you factor that, times 2, it's going to come out to well over 21,000 skill power, actually closer to about 23,000 skill power, that I get directly from this Specialized talent. That's very, very strong. It's a stamina backpack, and it does have armor in the major attribute slot. Again, nothing more important to roll there. If you do want something like skill power, you can opt to run it, especially with a ballistic shield, because you'll be tanking most of the damage head on. But it's something that, armor really doesn't hurt. It's probably the best in slot, and you're going to roll it all over the place, and a lot of competitive PvP meta builds are going to run it. And now on to the most important thing about the build, other than the fact that it's a 4-piece gear set build. The Barrett's Bulletproof Vest, in my eyes, is the most important item in patch 1.5. It is the most versatile item, it is the most powerful single item, and it has so much utility in so many builds that I would recommend getting one of these immediately. Now, for anyone wondering where to get one of these, you're just going to go right down here to the corner of the Dark Zone. All of my friends are in here, as you can see. Some of my fellow community members are farming for it right now. You can go to Lexington Event Center on World Tier 5 and farm challenge mode. That's where we've gotten them. And you're going to go through as frequently as possible. A huge shout out to Dirt Nasty UEG. I kept getting confused of names. I'm sorry about that. It was a long night. I had a really long stream. But a huge shout out. He actually hooked me up with this chess piece. I appreciate that a great deal. To no end, actually. It's been a really great time running with all these community members. So far, I hope to continue that. And again, thank you so much. You made it possible for me to show this build tonight. This is the place you're going to get that chess piece. And like I said, it's the most essential item in patch 1.5 overall. So as you can see, I have 124,000 skill power, I have 386,000 toughness, and I have 180,000 primary DPS on the meter. And just to review the 3-piece talent right here, in case no one read it, Barrett's Bulletproof, no skills on cooldown, increases skill power by 10%. So when none of my skills are on cooldown, I have more skill power, which means better skills, which means a better ballistic shield and a better heal. When one skill is on cooldown, increases damage by 5%, I'm typically going to have that active, and I'll explain that in a second, why ballistic shield interacts with this chest piece in a really unique way. 2 skills on cooldown increases armor by 10%. So no matter what, one of these bonuses will be active. And primarily with my build, the second bonus of 1 skill on cooldown increases damage by 5% is going to be active. And then when I do lose my ballistic shield, I will then get this tanky skill of 2 skills on cooldown increases armor by 10%. So I'm always going to have an advantage, whether it be a stronger heal when I do pop it, whether it be more damage when my heal's on cooldown, or whether it be after I've lost my primary defensive line with the ballistic shield, having more armor and being more tanky. It's a really solid chest piece. It's going to go with a lot of builds, and expect me, if you at all follow our content, to build a lot of things around that chest piece. I recommend everyone goes and gets that right now before they nerf it. If they even do nerf it, it's very, very good, and it's very, very fun. So moving on to my weapons, now that I've talked about all my gear pieces, I have a converted USC. There are better SMGs to run with this build. This is just the one that I have that has the right talents, okay? So you're not going to be critting, you don't have to worry about critical hit damage. I would prefer something like an MP7 or an MP5 that have higher rates of fire, or a converted SMG9 that has a better mag size especially. But this does get the job done. It's decent RPM, decent mag size, it's okay. And then it has good damage scaling. Right here, before anything else happens, you can see I have 18.8 thousand base damage. And since I won't be getting any crits because of the D3-FNC set, it's important to have high base damage so I can actually trade with enemy players, because that's one of the core components of an SMG. Now for my talents, Unforgiving is top tier. I would recommend having this because no matter what, you're going to be proccing some bonuses. And if you do get down to 1 health segment and then choose to proc critical save, during that time, if you're trading, you're going to have 25% increased damage on top of the really high base damage that you already have because it's an SMG. It's going to be very, very competitive. I have Brutal because I'm always going to be aiming for the head, and there's a variety of reasons why, but I'll talk about that more in a second. And then Responsive because it's not reflected on the meter, and it's actually a really great bonus since you're going to be walking right up to targets and face tanking them pretty much all of the time. For the mods, I'm going to talk about really quickly. I have extended mag size, critical hit damage, critical hit chance. You don't want critical hit chance there. That should be rate of fire. That's the most important thing. I actually don't have one that has that, but I wanted to put the build out there. Critical hit chance should be rate of fire because you're not going to be relying on the critical hit chance at all. For my Optic, I have optimal range, headshot, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. Again, you don't want critical hit damage or critical hit chance at all. You want optimal range, but then you want accuracy and stability. For small muzzle, I have accuracy, critical hit damage, stability, and reduced threat. The only thing that I would remove is critical hit damage for something else, but that's a very good muzzle break because it's going to keep the bullets tighter with the accuracy. And then for the underbarrel, I have accuracy, optimal range, stability. That's a great roll right there. So this converted USC is fantastic. It's going to get the job done very well, and I'm going to demonstrate a few things in the firing range before I go to live gameplay and commentate over that after I talk about my skills and my talents. The first thing to know is you're going to be running Assault Shield. Equips a shield that grants the user's weapon increased damage, knockback, accuracy, and faster reload. The increased damage is just great all around. The knockback is great when fighting enemies, NPCs, because you're going to be able to stagger them and then kill them while they're not dealing damage. Accuracy means tighter bullet spread again, which makes the gun shoot much more in a straight line. It's like a laser beam, to be real. I'll show you in a second. It's extremely accurate. And then faster reload speed means more damage faster, really increased utility in PvP. And then as you can see, the health on this is only 766,000, but that's still quite a lot and will have a lot of value in PvP especially. Now moving on to your heal, you're going to be running the booster shot mod on it. You can definitely opt if you want to for something like overdose for increased survivability, but the booster shot mitigation also applies to the shield, which is very, very good. And with the increased skill power from your Barrett's bulletproof chest piece, you're going to have a competitive booster shot most of the time. Because when you do use your assault shield, it's actually not on cooldown. I'll demonstrate that in a second. If you're running solo, you're going to want to run the medical wing signature. It auto procs if you take lethal damage. You don't have to worry about manually doing that. If you're running in a squad, I would recommend Tactical Link or Survivor Link, whichever you're more comfortable with, but always run Recovery Link if you're solo, and even then sometimes if you're in a squad to actually revive downed enemies. Downed allies, I'm sorry. So moving on now to my talents. This is where some of the really cool interactions come from. You're going to want to run Triage. This is kind of the most basic of the four. It just means faster heals. It just means you can get your assault shield back faster. It also helps your allies. It's just a good thing to run if you're in a group all around. Moving on here, if you are solo, you can switch that out for something like One is None. That's a really great talent as well. It's at the bottom right over here. And for anyone that doesn't know, One is None. Headshot a hostile to have a 50% chance of not consuming the bullet. You're always aiming for the head for a variety of reasons, so that's a really good one to run if you're solo over Triage. If you are solo, you definitely want Precision. Headshot a hostile to pulse them for 10 seconds. This is very important because this is a way around the D3-FNC effect of stripping the SMG of its critical hit chance. If you headshot a hostile and pulse them with precision, or if your group member has pulse, you'll still be able to crit on them for the amount that pulse has, the base critical hit chance amount on pulse. If you are in a group and someone has a pulse to run for you, then run on the move. You can kill downed agents and get 30% increased all damage resilience, which is very, very good for 10 seconds, and it's very easy to proc. So if you're in a group, run on the move. If you're not, if you're solo, run precision. And then you have critical save here. That's an essential for every single build. No questions asked. That is what you want to be running. 40% is a huge deal with medkits as well, and it's really going to save your life. And then combat medic. This is a really interesting interaction. So let's read the language here. Use a medkit in your allies to heal group members and proxies within 20 meters by 40%. This means you heal your ballistic shield with your combat medic, your own ballistic shield, by 40% of its max health every time you use a medkit. It also means that your allies, when using combat medic, heal your ballistic shield for 40% of its max health every time they use a medkit. So if you're in a group, have everyone run this. Even if you're not in a group, you're going to run this so that you can give huge chunks of health back to your ballistic shield and keep it alive, because you have no other method of doing that. The only time you're going to be in real danger is getting bursted by like 5 agents at once who then kill your ballistic shield. So now moving on to the firing range, I'm going to show you exactly why this happens. So let's look at my stats here. This is because the Barrett bulletproof chest piece. I have 124,000 skill power. So now when I use my ballistic shield, it's important to note that it is not on cooldown. It is an active skill, so I still have my 124,000 skill power, which means with my ballistic shield active, I can then be popping my booster shot. Once I have popped my booster shot, my skills increase, all my meters increase. I have dropped down to 112,000 skill power because one skill is on cooldown. I've gone up to 454,000 toughness due to booster shot, having the mitigation. And then I've also gone up, and I was over 200,000 on the primary DPS meter because of booster shot's effect. Now this is a very potent combination. You get increased damage not only from booster shot, but from the actual Barrett chest piece as well, and you can start to deal a lot of damage. Now once I have headshotted the hostile, you can see that I am now critting again. I'm critting for 71,000 to the head. I do a lot of damage to enemy players. I can pulse any enemy player that I get a headshot on, and if you in any way have a group member with pulse or precision on, you can start to get around the no crit effect from D3-FNC. Another thing that you want to note is you can see how stable the gun is. I am shooting off to the right on purpose. Now I move back on target, and you can see that I don't move ever. The reticle is extremely accurate. You can fire wherever you want to without ever having the reticle jump upwards. The stability is very, very high. Accuracy is something you want more of. As you can see, the bullets, the only thing that's holding you back is the bullet spread. So it's important, again, to get as much accuracy as possible on your gun mods in particular. And now, when we throw away our shield and we pop our booster shot, we're going to go in and we're going to see our character sheet that we have survivability of 58.23% weapon damage, because we've now got both skills on cooldown, assuming that the enemy's bursted down my shield. I've got 512,000 toughness, and eventually it will disappear. It's gone down here. Now we're at 435,000. And as soon as one of these skills comes off cooldown, I'm going to drop down to about 52,000 toughness, which is, or 52% mitigation. I'm sorry, it's been a very long night. I streamed for like 14 hours. I'm really excited about this build. Let's make sure I show all the different mechanics. 52.94, there we go. That's because the 10% boost to armor is gone because I have one skill off of cooldown. And then moving on to my actual gear mods. Just really quickly, I want to show, I forgot to show these when I talked about the gear earlier. I have armor in the firearms mod and electronics mod that I have on my chest piece. I have armor on this firearms in particular here that I have on my mask. I have armor on this mod here in my knee pads. I have armor here, and I have performance mods. This is a firearms with armor. I have performance mods with 6.5% ballistic shield health in all 4 of my mod slots. You can opt for something like ballistic shield damage. You can opt for something like ballistic shield damage resilience. There's a lot of different options here. I've gone for ballistic shield health because it helps a lot with keeping it alive longer. But if you go for something like ballistic shield damage, you're going to deal even further increased damage when you're fighting enemies in the Dark Zone, enemy players in particular. This is a really fantastic build. It's got a lot of utility, and it's super fun to use. So that's going to be about it for that. I'm going to scroll over my character sheet really quickly just to make sure I've gone everything in depth. I have 170,000 health. That's a lot. That's a very tanky build. I'm going to keep going. My critical hit chance doesn't matter. It's at 0.0%. But once you've pulsed the target, again, you can get around that. Critical hit damage doesn't matter either. I'm not relying on that. I'm relying on my base damage. Headshot damage still applies. The modifier is good. 62% is quite powerful. You can get that on different gun mods and have more power than I do. Enemy armor damage, important to keep track of. Again, I'm at 19% because of various different talents like my mask and my knee pads in the minor attribute slot, which is great. And then survivability, 52.94% mitigation, which is further increased if I actually lose my shield by the Barrett chest piece. So that's going to be about it. Now I'm going to kick it over to some gameplay in the Dark Zone and show exactly how the build works while commentating on the tactics that I'm using to get the most out of it. Okay, so here we are. I'm going up against 3 enemies, and you can see that I have plenty competitive damage. The optimal range increase from the gun mods means that I can actually trade with enemies that are a lot farther away than normally they would be with an SMG, and normally it wouldn't be as competitive as it is, but that's very fortunate. When you are going up against someone that tries to get close, all you have to do is keep the shield between you and them, and you can deal tons of damage while taking almost no damage whatsoever. When you do rifle butt, it is very easy. You keep the shield in front of you, you're constantly absorbing damage, and all it really relies on is you keeping the shield between you and the enemies. If you do that, you rely on combat medic, you're constantly getting those 40% procs from yourself and your teammates. You're going to be able to do a lot of things. You can also absorb fire and not be lit on fire. When you are in front of a flame turret, you will not be lit by that flame turret while it shoots your shield, and it does almost no damage whatsoever. When you do trade with an enemy's head, you're going to be dealing well over 10,000 damage with an SMG to an enemy's head, still capable of critting as soon as you hit them even one time. It doesn't even rely on an enemy's pulse if you have precision. And you can do tons of damage while taking almost none because they have to get around you in order to kill you. The only time that this build really breaks down is when you get flanked by a bunch of different enemies. But that's very rare, and that's actually not something that happens often, especially if you're in a team, because you can just find an alleyway or a choke point. As you can see there, I can melt extremely fast. If I land nothing but headshots, I can kill an enemy in a fraction of a second with a ballistic shield with an SMG active. There are so many situations where this build is the best that I've ever played as in the Dark Zone. The best for a squad composition. They can hide behind you. You can destroy turrets very quickly. You have very high base damage. You can act as a counter CC build. You can act as a burst damage build. You can act as a healer build. You can augment any sort of group composition very, very well and do a lot of really fun things. So it's something that I look forward to using a lot more in the future. I don't have all that much gameplay, and I am sorry that this video dragged on as long as it did. It's extremely long, but that's because I was really excited about the build, and there's a lot of interactions that are extremely powerful. There's a lot more coming. I'll be doing a lot more builds like this in patch 1.5. I'm fresh off the heels of a 14-hour live stream, so if I sound out of it or if I forgot anything in the build video, please let me know in the comments below, and I will immediately try to answer that and let you know what it was I forgot, all the different information. So as you can see though, the build is very powerful. You can trade with pretty much any other competing build while absorbing tons of damage. You constantly have bonuses active at every single turn, and it's one of the most fun things I've ever played in my life in this game. So that's going to be about it, guys. If you want to support the channel, please check out the links below. Stay tuned for a lot more builds coming, a lot more diverse builds with different concepts, different theories, and I'm actually really excited for patch 1.5, more so than I even thought I would be. So again, if you really want to see more content, check out our Facebook page. We have a great one in the links below. Our Discord channel, DZ911, a lot of great stuff in the links below. And as always, guys, thanks for watching and have a nice night.